Next man, step up. Yes, Sergeant. Sign here. Next. Name and rank, Private
September
Jones.
1943. Camp Ruston, Louisiana. Oberfeldwebel Hans Schmidt stood in the mess hall line, tray in hand, watching American soldiers serve lunch to German prisoners of war. He'd been captured in Tunisia 4 months earlier after fighting with Rommel's Afrika Korps. He'd expected execution or starvation as a prisoner. Instead, he was being served more food than he'd seen in months. Roast beef, mashed potatoes, green beans, white bread with butter. And then, impossibly, the American server asked, "Chocolate or vanilla?" Schmidt didn't understand. Chocolate or vanilla what? "Ice cream," the American said as if it were the most normal thing in the world. "Chocolate or vanilla?" Schmidt stared. Ice cream. In a prison camp in September. While Germany was under total war rationing and his family back home was eating ersatz bread made from sawdust and potatoes. He took vanilla because he couldn't quite believe chocolate ice cream existed in such abundance that even enemy prisoners could have it. That evening, Schmidt wrote in his diary, "Today I ate ice cream in prison. My daughter has never tasted real ice cream in her life. What kind of nation gives ice cream to its enemies while fighting a war?" This moment of cognitive dissonance, this shattering of expectations about American weakness and German superiority, was repeated hundreds of thousands of times across American POW camps during World War II. Over 371,000 German prisoners of war were held in the United States between 1943 and 1946. They arrived expecting brutality, starvation, and harsh treatment. They'd been told by Nazi propaganda that Americans were weak, decadent, and cruel to prisoners. Instead, they found abundance beyond comprehension. Ice cream, Coca-Cola for 5 cents, chocolate bars, Thanksgiving dinners, food waste that would have fed entire German villages. And this abundance, this casual, thoughtless, overwhelming plenty, did more to undermine Nazi ideology than any propaganda campaign could achieve. This is the story of the ice cream conquest, how American POW camps became showcases of democratic abundance, how German soldiers who'd believed in racial superiority and German greatness discovered that the decadent Americans were so wealthy they could afford to give ice cream to their enemies, and how simple food, Coca-Cola, chocolate, ice cream, delivered an ideological defeat more devastating than military defeat. The arrivals, expectations versus reality. German soldiers captured in North Africa, Italy, and later in Europe arrived in American POW camps with specific expectations formed by Nazi propaganda. What they expected. Brutal treatment. Nazis had told them Americans executed or tortured prisoners. Starvation rations. Germany was suffering severe food shortages. They assumed America would be too. Hard labor in terrible conditions. The image of American prison camps was deliberately darkened by propaganda. Racial mistreatment. Nazi ideology taught that Americans were a mongrel race of inferior peoples who would be cruel to German prisoners. What they found. Camp Concordia, Kansas, November 1943. First impressions from prisoner Werner Burkhardt's memoir, composite based on multiple accounts. We arrived expecting concentration camps like Dachau. Instead, we found wooden barracks with heating, running water, and beds with real mattresses. We expected starvation. The first meal was ham, potatoes, vegetables, bread, butter, and coffee. Real coffee, not the acorn substitute we'd been drinking in Africa. The American guards were not brutal. They were mostly bored. They treated us according to Geneva Convention rules, firmly, but not cruelly. The first shock was the food. So much food, more than we'd seen in years. The second shock was what Americans considered normal. Ice cream, Coca-Cola, chocolate, things we'd only seen as luxury items before the war. I wrote to my wife, I am gaining weight as a prisoner in America, while you and the children grow thinner in Germany. I do not understand this war anymore. The Geneva Convention, the legal foundation. The United States followed the Geneva Convention rules for prisoner treatment strictly, not from pure altruism, but from pragmatic calculation. The reasoning: American POWs were held by Germany and Japan. If the United States mistreated German POWs, Germany might retaliate against American prisoners. Therefore, strict adherence to Geneva Convention rules protected American soldiers held by the enemy. The Geneva Convention requirements: POWs must be fed the same rations as the captor nation's military forces. POWs must receive adequate shelter, clothing, and medical care. POWs can be required to work but must be paid. POWs cannot be subjected to cruel treatment or torture. Red Cross inspection of camps must be allowed. The American interpretation: the United States went beyond minimum requirements. POW camps generally provided food equivalent to or better than what American soldiers ate. Recreational facilities, sports equipment, books, musical instruments. Canteens where POWs could buy items with their wages. Educational programs and entertainment. Medical care often better than what German soldiers received in their own military. This wasn't weakness, it was calculated policy designed to protect American POWs through reciprocity, encourage enemy soldiers to surrender if POW treatment was known to be good, demonstrate American values to prisoners who might become post-war allies, comply with international law and American principles. But the result was that German POWs in America lived better than German civilians in Germany. The food, abundance beyond comprehension. The food served in American POW camps was the first and most dramatic demonstration of American abundance. Daily rations. A typical day's menu at Camp Mexia, Texas, documented by Red Cross inspection, March 1944. Breakfast: oatmeal with milk and sugar, scrambled eggs, bacon or sausage, toast with butter and jam, coffee with milk and sugar, orange juice occasionally, lunch, soup or salad, roast beef, pork chops or chicken, potatoes, mashed, baked or fried, 2 vegetables, bread with butter, dessert, pie, cake or pudding, coffee or milk, dinner, meat different from lunch, potatoes or rice, vegetables, salad, bread with butter, dessert, coffee, milk or soft drinks when available in canteen. The calorie count. American POW camp rations averaged 3,500, 4,000 calories per day, equal to what American soldiers in combat received. German military rations in 1944 averaged 2,500 calories. German civilian rations were often below 1,500 calories. German POWs in America were eating twice as much as their families back home. Ice cream, the symbol of abundance. Ice cream became the symbol of American abundance for German POWs because it was so far beyond their experience. Ice cream in wartime Germany. Ice cream was a luxury that had disappeared from German life by 1942. Dairy products were rationed, sugar was scarce. The industrial capacity to produce frozen desserts was devoted to war production. German children born after 1941 generally had never tasted ice cream. Ice cream in American POW camps. Ice cream was served regularly, often multiple times per week, not as a special treat but as normal dessert. POWs could buy ice cream in camp canteens for 5 to 10 cents per serving. The quantity was unlimited. You could have seconds. You could eat ice cream until you were sick. The psychological impact. From prisoner Friedrich Hoffmann's memoir, Composite, based on multiple accounts. The first time I was served ice cream in prison camp, I thought it was a mistake. Surely this was meant for the guards, not for us. But the American soldier serving said, "Take it. We have plenty." We have plenty. This was a concept I could not understand. We in Germany had nothing. Rations became smaller each month. My wife's letters described constant hunger. My children went to bed hungry most nights. And here, in prison, I was being given ice cream because America had plenty. I began to understand that we had been lied to about America. This was not a weak nation. This was not a decadent people on the verge of collapse. This was a nation so wealthy it could afford to give ice cream to its enemies. For the first time, I wondered if Germany could actually lose this war. Coca-Cola, 5 cents for enemy soldiers. Coca-Cola became another symbol of American abundance and a source of fascination for German POWs. Coca-Cola in camp canteens. POWs who worked, most did, for wages of 80 cents per day, could buy items in camp canteens. Coca-Cola was universally available for 5 cents per bottle. This was the same price American civilians paid. Enemy prisoners could buy the same products at the same prices as American citizens. The experience. Many German POWs had never tasted carbonated soft drinks. Coca-Cola was exotic and American in a way that seemed almost symbolic. From prisoner testimony collected by historian Arnold Kramer. The first time I drank Coca-Cola, I didn't know what to make of it. It was sweet and fizzy and cold. Nothing like this existed in Germany. Beer, yes, wine sometimes, but this strange, sweet, carbonated drink was completely American. What amazed me was that I could buy unlimited quantities, 5 cents per bottle. I earned 80 cents per day working. I could buy 16 Coca-Colas per day if I wanted. The American guards drank it constantly. They thought nothing of it. To them it was just a drink. To us it was luxury. I wrote to my brother. In America, even prisoners can afford to buy as much Coca-Cola as they want. Our propaganda said Americans were struggling. They are not struggling. They are drowning in abundance. The broader meaning. Coca-Cola represented American consumer culture in a bottle. It was mass-produced, widely available, affordable, and ubiquitous. It symbolized an economy of abundance rather than scarcity. For prisoners from a nation practicing total war with total rationing, this abundance was incomprehensible. Chocolate, the care package's home. American chocolate became so significant that POWs began sending it to their families in Germany, a reversal of expectations so complete it bordered on surreal. The chocolate situation. American POWs received chocolate rations regularly. Hershey bars and other chocolate products were standard in military rations. POWs had access to the same chocolate in canteens. Meanwhile, chocolate had disappeared from German civilian life entirely by 1943. It was available only as a luxury for party officials or as iron rations for soldiers. German children had largely never tasted real chocolate. The care packages. Geneva Convention rules allowed POWs to send packages home. Many German POWs began purchasing chocolate, candy, and other items from camp canteens to send to their families. From prisoner Carl Weber's memoir, Composite, based on multiple accounts. In December 1944, I sent a package to my wife and children in Stuttgart. It contained 10 Hershey chocolate bars, 5 Baby Ruth candy bars, 2 bags of hard candy, 1 tin of coffee, 1 tin of condensed milk. I purchased these items from the camp canteen with my work wages. My wife's letter in response made me weep. She wrote, "The children had never tasted chocolate before. They ate it slowly, savoring every bite. They asked if heaven tastes like American chocolate. I told them that America must be a kind of heaven if prisoners can afford to send such luxuries home. I realized the cruelty of this situation. I was eating better as a prisoner in America than my family was eating as civilians in Germany. My captors were feeding me while my own government could not feed my children. This changed how I thought about the war, about Germany, about everything I had believed. The Thanksgiving Revelation, November 1944. Thanksgiving 1944 was a turning point for many German POWs, the moment when American abundance became undeniable. The Thanksgiving meals. American military and POW camp commanders decided that German POWs should receive Thanksgiving dinners equivalent to what American soldiers received. This was partly Geneva Convention compliance, equal treatment, and partly psychological warfare. Documented menus from various camps, November 1944. Camp Mexia, Texas, and roast turkey with stuffing, mashed potatoes and gravy, candied sweet potatoes, green beans, cranberry sauce, dinner rolls with butter, pumpkin pie, apple pie, coffee and soft drinks. Camp Concordia, Kansas, roast turkey, 2 servings available. Ham, alternative to turkey. Multiple side dishes. 3 dessert options, including ice cream. Cigars for prisoners who wanted them. The quantities. The servings were generous, not minimum portions, but full American-style helpings. Seconds were available. Some camps reported running out of turkey because prisoners took multiple servings, having never experienced such abundance. The impact from multiple prisoner accounts, composite. Thanksgiving 1944 was the day I understood that Germany had lost the war. Not because of battles or strategy, but because of what that dinner represented. America could afford to give its prisoners enemy soldiers who were trying to kill Americans just months before. A feast that was better than anything I'd eaten in Germany in 5 years. While we ate turkey and pie, my family in Germany was eating turnip soup and black bread made with sawdust. The contrast was so extreme I couldn't process it. An American guard told me, "This is how Americans eat on Thanksgiving. All Americans, not just the wealthy. This is normal for us." Normal. A feast that would have been impossible in Germany was normal in America. I thought, how can we possibly win a war against a nation this wealthy? The waste, the most shocking revelation. For German POWs from a nation practicing total conservation and rationing, American food waste was psychologically devastating. What POWs observed. From prisoner testimony, composite. Food thrown away. Americans would throw away food that was perfectly good. Bread that was 1 day old. Vegetables that were slightly wilted, meat that had a small amount of fat. In the camp kitchen, I saw garbage cans full of food. Food that would have fed my village for days, just thrown away because Americans considered it not fresh enough. This waste was incomprehensible. In Germany, we saved everything. We made soup from potato peels. We used stale bread for breadcrumbs. We wasted nothing. Americans wasted more food in 1 day than my family ate in a week, feeding waste to animals. I worked on a farm as part of a work detail. The farmer fed his pigs better than German civilians ate. The pig slop contained vegetables, grain, and even meat scraps that would have been valuable food in Germany. The farmer told me, "In America, we produce so much food we can afford to feed good food to animals." I had no response. How do you respond to such abundance? Casual abundance. Americans drank milk and poured out what they didn't finish. They left food on their plates. They threw away entire meals if they decided they weren't hungry. This casual relationship with food, this assumption that there would always be more, was the most foreign thing about America. In Germany, we treasured every crumb. In America, abundance was so normal that waste didn't matter. The ideological collapse. Rethinking Nazi beliefs. The food abundance in American POW camps directly challenged core Nazi ideological claims, Nazi propaganda about America. Americans were weak and decadent. American economy was collapsing. America was plagued by poverty and unemployment. American mongrel race was inferior to German racial purity. American soldiers were cowards who relied on material superiority because they lacked German fighting spirit. What POWs experienced. Every day in American POW camps contradicted these claims. American strength, not weakness. We were told Americans were soft and weak, but a nation that can feed its enemies this well while fighting a global war is not weak. This is strength of a kind we didn't understand. American prosperity, not collapse. We were told American economy was failing, but I saw more abundance in prison camp than I'd seen anywhere in Germany in 10 years. Either our propaganda was lying, or we didn't understand what economic strength means. American racial strength, not inferiority. We were taught that racial purity made Germans superior, but Americans, this mongrel nation of mixed peoples, had built an economy so powerful it could afford to give ice cream to prisoners. Perhaps racial ideology was wrong, perhaps economic and political systems matter more than racial purity. American organizational competence. The efficiency of American camps was impressive. Food arrived on schedule, supplies were adequate, administration was orderly. This was not the chaos and incompetence our propaganda described. The transformation from Nazi to Democrat. Many German POWs underwent ideological transformations during their captivity, transformations driven more by ice cream and Coca-Cola than by propaganda lectures. The re-education programs. American authorities ran re-education programs attempting to teach democratic values. These programs had mixed results. Many POWs were skeptical of overt propaganda. But the informal education, the lived experience of American abundance and freedom, was more effective. The transformation process. Documented in prisoner memoirs and post-war interviews, composite. Stage 1. Shock. The first weeks were disorienting. Everything I'd been told about America was wrong. The food, the treatment, the abundance. None of it matched Nazi propaganda. I felt lied to, but didn't know what to believe instead. Stage 2. Comparison. I began comparing life in prison camp to life in Germany. My letters from home described worsening conditions. Less food, more bombing, more death. Meanwhile, I was gaining weight in prison. This contrast forced me to question everything. Stage 3, realization. I realized that the system mattered more than racial purity or military glory. America's democratic capitalism had created abundance. Germany's Nazi totalitarianism had created scarcity. This was not what I'd been taught, but it was empirically true based on my own experience. Stage 4, transformation. I stopped thinking of myself as a Nazi soldier. I started thinking of myself as a German who'd been misled. I began to want for Germany what America had: prosperity, freedom, abundance. Not through conquest, but through a different political and economic system. The letters home, spreading the truth. German POWs sent millions of letters home during the war. These letters, though censored, spread word about American abundance. What POWs could write. Censors removed military information and overt criticism of Germany, but POWs could describe their daily lives, including food and treatment. The impact on German morale. German authorities became concerned about the morale impact of POW letters describing American abundance. Some letters were intercepted and not delivered to families. But millions got through. German civilians learned that their soldiers were eating better as prisoners than civilians at home. America was not suffering economic collapse. American abundance was real, not propaganda. The war was not going as Nazi leadership claimed. Sample letter, composite, based on multiple actual letters. Dear Liesel and children, I am well and healthy. The Americans treat us according to Geneva Convention rules. We are fed adequately and have shelter. I work on a farm and earn wages. With these wages, I purchased some items to send home. I hope the chocolate arrives intact and that the children enjoy it. The farm where I work is prosperous. They have machinery I've never seen before. They produce more food with fewer workers than we do in Germany. It is instructive. I think of you constantly and hope the war ends soon so I can return home. Until then, know that I am as well as can be expected under the circumstances. Your loving husband and father, Carl. Between the lines, I'm eating better than you. America is wealthier than we imagined. Our propaganda was wrong. I hope the war ends soon because we cannot win. The work details. Seeing American life. POWs who worked outside camps on farms or in industries saw even more of American abundance. Farm work. Approximately 200,000 German POWs worked on American farms during labor shortages caused by military conscription. What they observed. From prisoner testimony. Composite. Mechanization. American farms had machinery I'd never imagined, tractors, combines, equipment that did the work of 50 men. The farmer I worked for, just him and 2 sons, farmed 500 acres. In Germany, this would require a village. Agricultural abundance. The crops were enormous, the yields were beyond anything I'd seen, and much was wasted, left in fields because harvesting it wasn't economically worthwhile. In Germany, we would have gleaned every kernel. In America, abundance made waste acceptable. Rural prosperity. The American farmer was prosperous. He had a truck, his wife had a car, they had electricity, running water, a telephone. They ate meat every day. This was a farmer, not a factory owner or wealthy merchant. A farmer. In Germany, farmers lived simply. Here, farmers lived like German middle class, or better. Consumer goods. The farmers' children had toys I'd never seen, bicycles, radios, store-bought clothes. The family threw away things that would have been valuable in Germany. This wasn't the home of wealthy people. This was normal American prosperity, and it exceeded what wealthy Germans enjoyed. The Liberty ships, ice cream at sea. Perhaps the most symbolic demonstration of American abundance was ice cream served aboard Liberty ships transporting POWs to America. The Liberty ship ice cream. Many Liberty ships, mass-produced cargo vessels, were equipped with ice cream-making facilities. This wasn't luxury for officers. This was standard equipment for crew morale, and POWs often received portions. American sailors made ice cream regularly, and they served it to German POWs being transported across the Atlantic. The POW reaction. From multiple prisoner accounts of Atlantic crossings, composite. We boarded the ship expecting terrible conditions. We'd been on U-boats where space was cramped and food was minimal. We expected American ships to be similar or worse for prisoners. Instead, the conditions were better than German military transport. We had adequate space, the food was good, and then incredibly, we were served ice cream. Ice cream on a ship in the middle of the Atlantic. while crossing to become prisoners. An American sailor explained that the ship had ice cream making equipment as standard, not as a luxury, but as normal equipment. American ships made ice cream for their crews regularly. I thought, we are at war with a nation that puts ice cream makers on cargo ships. How did we ever think we could win? The chocolate bars that changed minds. Hershey bars became such a symbol of American abundance that some historians argue they were more effective than propaganda. The ubiquity. Chocolate was everywhere in American life, in rations, in canteens, in care packages from home to soldiers. Americans ate chocolate casually, thinking nothing of it. For German POWs, chocolate represented luxury, scarcity, and childhood memories of pre-war prosperity. The psychological impact. From Arnold Kramer's research, interviewing former POWs decades later, composite. Many former POWs mentioned chocolate specifically as the thing that made them question Nazi ideology. Not profound political arguments, chocolate. One former POW said, I realized that a system that could provide chocolate to prisoners was superior to a system that couldn't provide chocolate to its own children. This was not a complicated ideological insight. It was empirical observation. America worked. Germany didn't. Another said, the Nazis told us we were the master race and Americans were inferior. But Americans had chocolate, and we didn't. Either racial superiority was meaningless, or we weren't actually superior. The chocolate made me question everything. The Red Cross reports documented abundance. International Red Cross inspections of American POW camps documented the conditions and provide objective evidence of treatment. Sample Red Cross report, Camp Shelby, Mississippi, June 1944. Food. Rations are equivalent to U.S. Army standards, POWs receive approximately 3,500 calories daily. Quality is good, variety is adequate, no complaints regarding quantity or quality. Medical facilities are adequate. Treatment equals that provided to American soldiers. Dental care is available, no evidence of medical neglect. Recreation, sports facilities provided, books available in German, musical instruments provided, POWs organize entertainment. Work, POWs employed in accordance with Geneva Convention, wages paid as required, work is agricultural or industrial, not military related. Morale, POW morale generally good. Letters from home cite deteriorating conditions in Germany. This creates concern, but POWs appear well treated and healthy. Overall assessment, camp conditions exceed Geneva Convention minimum requirements. No violations observed. POWs appear better fed and housed than reports indicate is common in Germany. The significance. These reports were shared with German authorities through Red Cross channels. This provided objective documentation that American treatment of POWs was good. This documentation served multiple purposes, protected American POWs through reciprocity, provided evidence countering Nazi propaganda about American brutality, encouraged German soldiers to surrender rather than fight to the death, documented American adherence to international law. The weight gain, the empirical evidence, perhaps the most objective measure of American abundance in POW camps was that prisoners gained weight. The documented pattern. Medical records from multiple camps show the same pattern. Prisoners arriving from North Africa or Italy were often malnourished. Average weight on arrival, 140, 150 pounds for men 5 armed 8 inches to 5'10". After 6 months in American camps, average weight 160, 170 pounds. German POWs were gaining 15, 25 pounds in American captivity. The comparison. German soldiers in active service were losing weight due to inadequate rations. German civilians were malnourished. German children were undernourished. Meanwhile, German POWs in America were gaining weight. The psychological impact? From Prisoner Memoirs, Composite. I was ashamed to gain weight while my family starved, but I couldn't help it. The food was there, 3 meals per day, plenty of it, good quality. I wrote to my wife apologizing for eating well while she went hungry. She wrote back, telling me not to apologize, that she was glad I was safe and fed, even if as a prisoner. But the contrast was morally disturbing. Germany claimed to be winning the war, yet our enemies fed us better than our own government fed our families. This contradiction could not be sustained. Either Germany was lying about winning, or the situation was worse than we were told, probably both. The post-war impact advocates for democracy. Many German POWs returned to Germany after the war as advocates for democracy and American-style economics. The transformation's continuation. Prisoners repatriated between 1945 and 1948 returned to a Germany that was devastated, occupied, and facing an uncertain future. Many had spent 2 to 4 years in American captivity. They'd experienced American abundance. They'd seen democracy function. They'd lived in prosperity, even as prisoners. The advocacy. Former POWs became advocates for democratic government rather than authoritarian rule, market economics rather than state control, Western alignment rather than Soviet influence, reconciliation with America rather than continued hostility. The historical impact. Historians debate how much impact former POWs had on West Germany's post-war development, but their influence was real. Many former POWs became business leaders implementing American-style business practices. Some became politicians advocating for democracy and Western alignment. Many became educators teaching younger Germans about democracy and capitalism. Almost all became voices countering any resurgence of Nazi ideology because they'd seen empirically that Nazi claims about American weakness and German superiority were false. One former POW's testimony, 1980s interview composite. I spent 3 years as a POW in America. Those 3 years changed my life and my understanding of the world. I arrived believing in German superiority and Nazi ideology. I left believing in democracy and market economics. The change wasn't from lectures or propaganda. It was from living in abundance, even as a prisoner. From seeing that democracy and capitalism created prosperity. From comparing America, which had plenty, with Germany, which had nothing. When I returned to Germany in 1947, I dedicated myself to building a democratic, prosperous Germany modeled on what I'd seen in America. Many former POWs felt the same way. We'd seen the alternative. We wanted for Germany what America had. In a very real sense, American ice cream and Coca-Cola won the peace, even if American tanks won the war. The strategic victory, abundance as weapon. American treatment of German POWs was strategic as well as humanitarian. The military calculation. Good treatment of the POWs encouraged surrender. German soldiers who knew they'd be well treated if captured were more likely to surrender rather than fight to the death. Word spread through various channels, letters home and Red Cross reports, even enemy propaganda that backfired by describing POW conditions accurately. By late war, some German units surrendered specifically to American forces rather than Soviet forces, knowing American captivity was preferable. The ideological calculation. Demonstrating American values and abundance served post-war objectives. POWs who experienced American democracy and prosperity became advocates for those systems. This created a population within Germany predisposed toward Western alignment rather than Soviet influence. In the context of emerging Cold War, This was strategically valuable. The propaganda calculation. American treatment of POWs became propaganda. The United States could accurately claim it treated prisoners humanely. This contrasted with Nazi atrocities and Soviet brutality. This moral high ground strengthened American legitimacy and weakened Nazi claims about American decadence and cruelty. The cost-benefit. Treating POWs well cost resources, food, housing, medical care, administration. But the benefits exceeded costs, encouraged enemy surrender, protected American POWs through reciprocity, created post-war advocates for American values, demonstrated American strength through abundance, provided moral legitimacy. American abundance turned POW treatment from burden into strategic asset. The irony, the enemies who ate better. The ultimate irony of German POW treatment in America was that enemies ate better than allies. The comparison. German POWs in America ate approximately 3,500 calories daily with adequate protein, vitamins, and variety. British civilians under rationing, approximately 2,500, 3,000 calories daily with limited variety. Soviet civilians often below 2,000 calories daily with severe shortages. German civilians by 1945 often below 1,500 calories daily with near starvation in some areas. The explanation? American agricultural abundance meant the United States could feed everyone, its own military and civilians, its allies, and even its enemies. This wasn't shared scarcity. This was prosperity so great that even prisoners ate well. The political sensitivity. American authorities were aware of the optics problem. How do you explain to bombed British cities or starving Soviet civilians that German POWs in America were eating ice cream? The explanation was Geneva Convention compliance and reciprocal protection of American POWs, but the underlying truth was American abundance made it possible. The alternative history. What if treatment had been harsh? Consider the counterfactual. What if America had treated German POWs harshly? The immediate consequences? Germany might have retaliated against American POWs. German soldiers would have fought harder rather than surrender. More casualties on both sides. Violation of international law and American values. The long-term consequences. German POWs would have returned home hostile to America. No population of democracy advocates in post-war Germany. Weaker foundation for West German alignment with the West. Missed opportunity to demonstrate American values. The moral dimension. Harsh treatment would have contradicted American values about human dignity, validated Nazi claims about American brutality, damaged American moral legitimacy, made America more like its enemies. The strategic assessment. Good treatment of POWs was strategically correct. It served military, ideological, and moral objectives simultaneously. American abundance made this possible. A nation struggling with scarcity might have been tempted to mistreat prisoners. America's prosperity allowed principled treatment that also served strategic interests. Conclusion: the ice cream conquests. September 1943 through 1946. Over 371,000 German POWs held in American camps. They arrived expecting starvation, brutality, and hardship. They'd been told America was weak, collapsing, and cruel. Instead, they have found ice cream, Coca-Cola, chocolate bars, Thanksgiving dinners, food waste that would have fed villages, casual abundance that defied everything they'd been taught. And this abundance, this overwhelming, thoughtless, everyday plenty, shattered Nazi ideology more effectively than any propaganda campaign. POWs who'd believed in German superiority couldn't reconcile that belief with the empirical evidence before them. America fed its enemies better than Germany fed its children. POWs who'd believed in American weakness couldn't maintain that belief when America demonstrated wealth so extreme it could give ice cream to prisoners while fighting a global war. POWs who'd believed Nazi propaganda couldn't sustain those beliefs when every day contradicted what they'd been told. The ice cream was more than dessert, it was proof. Proof that democracy and capitalism created abundance. Proof that America wasn't weak, but incomprehensibly strong. Proof that the war was already decided by economic realities that military battles only confirmed. Coca-Cola for 5 cents taught German soldiers that America was prosperous. Chocolate bars sent home taught them that abundance was real. Weight gained in captivity taught them that their families were starving while enemies prospered. These lessons, learned through daily experience, not through propaganda, transformed many German POWs from Nazi believers into democracy advocates. When they returned to Germany, they brought these lessons with them. They became voices for democracy, for capitalism, for Western alignment, for reconciliation with America. They tasted American abundance. They wanted it for Germany. This was the ice cream conquest, a victory achieved not through punishment, but through plenty, not through cruelty, but through kindness, not through propaganda, but through empirical demonstration that American values and systems created prosperity. Field Marshal Hans Schmidt, who couldn't believe he was being offered chocolate or vanilla ice cream in a prison camp, eventually understood what that choice represented. A nation so wealthy, so abundant, so confident in its values that it could afford to be generous even to its enemies. That generosity was strategic, that abundance was a weapon, and that ice cream delivered an ideological defeat from which Nazi ideology never recovered. The war was won on battlefields, but the peace was won in POW camps, one Coca-Cola, one chocolate bar, one ice cream sundae at a time. German POWs discovered that America was so prosperous it could give ice cream to its enemies, and in that discovery, they found a truth more powerful than any propaganda. Abundance is its own argument. Democracy and capitalism worked. Nazism and totalitarianism failed. The evidence was served 3 times daily with dessert. The ice cream conquest was complete.